So in a second, I'm going to pass it off to Amy Higer, the amazing president of our Adjunct Faculty Union. But before I do, I just want to mark this really critical moment that we are in, and why this is the moment. There's never been a better moment for us to build our power and fight for real, meaningful demands at this university, which guarantee that we can all work with dignity and respect and win the university that we as workers deserve and our students deserve. This is the time to win it. And here's why. We're at an amazing juncture. Since the pandemic has receded a bit, there's been a massive upsurge in labor organizing and militancy, from Starbucks to the Amazon Labor Union to John Deere. But unlike other moments in the history of this country where there's been moments of labor insurgency, this is arguably the first time that higher ed workers have been at the forefront. Over the last year, in 2022, the 5 biggest new unions in the United States were all higher ed unions. The 5 biggest new unions, all from higher ed. And as we've seen across the country, there have been strikes of staff, of grad workers, of adjuncts, of full-time faculty, across the country, from California and Illinois to New York and my hometown, Philly. And building on that, building on that, here at home at Rutgers, we have just finished an amazing strike authorization vote. The full-time faculty and adjunct faculty union took the strike vote right before spring break, and 80% of our members across all the unions voted, both unions voted, and 94% voted to authorize a strike. And then this week, our colleagues at AAUP-BHSNJ, which represent the medical faculty and clinicians, had a strike authorization vote where 95% voted to authorize a strike. From our understanding, this is the largest medical faculty and clinician strike vote since sometime in the 1980s. So we're dealing with really big moment right now. And so we're in this amazing position to fight and win real demands, and to both change this university and to lead the way in transforming public head in a broader sense. And so we should dig into people's thoughts and concerns and understand where folks are at, and look at each other and figure out how to move forward together. But I also want us to remember how strong we are and how much stronger we're going to get as we think about what to do. And with that, I'm going to pass it to you, Amy, to move us into the next part of the agenda.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see this amazing turnout. There's 20 screens on Zoom. Just phenomenal. I know we're here mostly for a nuts and bolts discussion of where we are in the contract campaign. And we will get to that in a few minutes. But I also want to try to put this moment into a broader context, where we are at this critical stage. There's a broader context we should be aware of, and it's part of what we've been, involved in for the last few years, really. I have been involved myself in political struggle since I was in college in the 1980s, many, many years ago, in the Reagan era. But in those struggles, I had to have some faith that what you were doing would matter down the road in some indirect way. You never really saw the fruits of those protests. This is the first time I've been involved in an organizing campaign that has the real potential to affect thousands of people's lives almost immediately. And at the same time, it's also a campaign that has much broader significance, or potentially, for the country. We know what we've been asking for in this campaign is fair and it's reasonable, equal pay for equal work, job security, access to healthcare that is affordable. We even got the governor to say that it's reasonable and fair this week. But what we're really asking for, and I'm going to put it bluntly, is an end to the exploitation of faculty members and graduate students in higher ed. And I'm going to say, I think we're going to win, right? And here's why. I'm going to quote my colleague and my friend, Bryan, who's in bargaining right now. We were talking in a Zoom call about the timeline for a strike, and we recognized that we may have to strike on the week of Passover. And he puts into the chat, how is this contract campaign different from all other contract campaigns, right? And I started to think about it, and it is, right? It's really different, and there's 3 ways that it's different. This campaign is bottom up, right? It's democratic unionism at its best. Right? We have done such an incredible job of mobilizing our members. Each and every one of you who has made calls, sent texts, written emails, held department meetings, come to happy hours, knocked on doors, you did this. Okay? And I'm going to shout out to the staff. It's the best organizing staff in the entire country. You know who you are. And I want to give a concrete example of how this matters. So on Wednesday this week, 40 of us showed up on Zoom for a bargaining session. Right? David Cohn and his team tried to shut us down. Right? They said they would not bargain with us with so many of us there on Zoom. So what did the 40 of us do in the face of that ultimatum? We took a vote. And it was unanimous. And we said, we're not leaving. If you want to walk away from the table because too many of us will see what you're doing, go right ahead. Right? 20 minutes later, because they always make us wait, they walked back in the room, they sat down, and they bargained. Right? In other words, we won. We met them and their top-down authoritarian exercise of power with bottom-up pressure, and we won. That's the kind of power we've built. So that's the first way. The second way this contract campaign is different from all other contract campaigns is that the full-time faculty, the part-time faculty, the graduate students, postdocs, and medical faculty are in this fight together. We are united. We support each other. We're at the bargaining table together, and we will be on the picket lines together if necessary. All right, we had a successful merger campaign about last summer, as did the medical faculty. President Holloway said, nope. But we've merged and we are in solidarity anyway. Right? We are one faculty in this campaign. So that model, that the motto, an injury to one is an injury to all, which is easy to say and hard to do, we've done it. So here I have to acknowledge the incredible leaders of the full-time grad faculty union, and I am grateful to both of them. It's Becky Given and Todd Wolfson. I think Becky's in bargaining now. And I'm just going to say, without their leadership, I do not think we would be ready to create a university that belongs to all of us. So thank you both. Finally, the third way this campaign is different from all other contract campaigns is that, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, and Todd just spoke to this, the eyes of the nation are on us. What we do over the next 3 weeks could fundamentally change the situation, not only here at Rutgers, but in colleges and universities around the country. We are part of the wave of labor activism in higher ed, right? And it's our turn, right? It's our turn to step up. If we stand united, if we have each other's backs, if we are union strong, we can do something historic here. I really believe that. So it's time to get a fair contract. If we don't get a fair contract, we are ready to shut this place down. I am ready for that. I know you are ready for it because the strike authorization vote was powerful. So the first order of business I think we need to address in the granular level before we open it up is that threat of an injunction from President Holloway. Now we have a lot of questions about it. And I'm just going to quote very briefly from Jim Pope, who is a law professor at Newark Law School, Rutgers Newark Law School Emeritus, and a fierce union activist. And he gives the best guidance here. So I'm just going to read what he says verbatim. He says this, right? There is only one way that a peaceful Rutgers strike can become illegal: if President Holloway chooses to make it so. It is entirely his decision whether to sue for a court injunction, and peaceful strikers will be violating no law until the injunction issues. So if that happens, and this is me adding this, right, it's up to us how we respond. It's up to us, all of us. All right, so let's be clear, what we will be responding to, if it happens, would be the assertion of an unjust authority to suppress our fundamental human right to withhold our labor. That's what it would be if President Holloway goes for an injunction. Let's be clear about that, right? And it's up to us to decide what to respond and how to respond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the great Donna Murch. I don't know where she is in these screens, but Donna, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great.
Amy, thank you so much for that really, really powerful summary of where we are. I agree 100% with both you and Todd. I wanted to talk a little bit about an action that the union is taking, which is, it's very clear, as in that quote from Jim Pope, there's no statute on the books that makes public sector strikes illegal. And can I just say the level of surprise and disappointment that in a deep blue state like New Jersey, with a historian for a president of the university, that he would take such a hard line tack against a union at the very moment when what we're witnessing is going on in Florida and throughout the country, that is impugning even a critical approach to the American past, attacking labor unions and the right to organize. This is not a good look for the first Black president of Rutgers. And we are deeply, deeply disappointed. So one of the ways to think about how to move forward with our job actions, because we already know there's no statute in New Jersey, but we have put together an open letter to Jonathan Holloway in order to get people from all over the country, especially those coming from African-American history, Black studies, social justice, women and gender studies, and labor, to talk about why Jonathan Holloway should never invoke the power of an injunction. And one of the most disturbing things about doing this is that it takes us back. He has chosen Chris Christie's head of labor relations, and we know that in 2015, when Chris Christie was hoping to run on the right wing of the Republican Party, he said on national television that the American Federation of Teachers deserves a punch to the face. So the question is, why is the Holloway administration taking a hardline tact and aligning itself with the vision of Chris Christie? We are deeply surprised and disappointed. And I'll tell you, the response that we've had to this letter is that other people are too. We have had an overwhelming response by people coming from a variety of different kinds of institutions, and a real sense of the deep moral wrong of this, but also the danger of this kind of position at a moment when we are seeing the university under attack. So the message that I want to bring to you is that people are watching all over the United States, not only in higher education, but in all different kinds of social justice struggles. And I am just feel such gratitude to have this enormous community of people that we do that care deeply about our public university and want to see true leadership that respects the workforce and also respects the moment that we are in during a global pandemic where there has been enormous suffering of all the different communities at Rutgers. So the letter will be going public next week. We're going to post it in several different outlets, and there will also be an opportunity for you to read and sign and share the letter. I'll turn it back to Becky. I'm sorry, turn it back to Todd and to Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Donna. And I think we're passing it to Anthony. I can't see him and or Sarah, but I'm not sure if Sarah is here. Sarah might be in bargaining. So assuming Anthony is here, I don't see him on the screen anymore. Anthony, do you want to jump in? Okay, we might not have him. So I'm trying to figure out what his piece was, and maybe we can figure out who can step into that piece real quick. Can somebody remind me what Anthony was going to give us an update on where bargaining's at? Is that right?
Todd, I could do it if you wanted. I'm Bryan. I'm here.
That's great, Bryan. Please jump in. I appreciate that.
Sure. Happy to. Hi, everybody.
Just to clarify, the point was actually on speaking to our students. I thought we were going to open up for.
Oh, okay. Speaking to our students. Well, Bryan, then you're speaking. How do we speak to our students? It's on you. Go get it.
We were just actually talking to students a couple of hours ago about the bargaining for the common good demands, Todd. And, that might be worth, mentioning here that if I can just say what just happened at bargaining for a moment, Sherry, and then come back to that the administration is continuing its tack, folks. This whole campaign has been characterized by them slow walking, dragging their feet, showing up late to meetings, and basically being like willfully non-responsive and unprepared to engage with us meaningfully. And just, in the last hour, graduate students received a counter from management, which just simply struck through their demand for 5 years of funding. There was no agreement on a grad funding extension side letter, recognition for fellows. Nope, sorry, can't do that. We'll talk to you after the contract's over, perhaps, but no, you're not getting that either. Maria Garth, who's leading the grad bargaining effort, characterized it, I thought, kindly as insufficient. And Becky Given just characterized it as they're just not engaging on anything. Similar returns for the the postdoc article, some small movement on academic freedom and alignment with AAUP on some language, but the salary demands still far below what they're asking, just not real engagement. And there really hasn't been much engagement either on the PTL demands that are essential, really, virtually none, as well as the bargaining for common good demands that students are calling for too. And on Monday, there'll be a presentation, hopefully from management, a presentation on the PTL counters that they owe us. And there'll also be a session for on the bargaining for the common good demands. And that'll be at 5 p.m. that evening. Could say more. I don't know how much folks, probably you have questions rather than things that I would just say there's a lot of bargaining going on. The unfortunate thing, as I said, is that not much substantive bargaining has gone on in any meaningful subject.
Thank you so much, Bryan, for that update. And so we'll pivot back to discussion about how we're speaking to our students. I think what we want to do now is open it up to Q&A. And my suggestion, because there's so many screens, is that people raise their hand, as Thomas has done, to ask questions, because that's the only way we're going to be able to track it. If folks put their name in the chat, we'll never be able to track that. So, all right, we already have three questions. So let's get in Thomas, Ellen, and Rob. Let's start there.
Oh, hi, everyone, and it's great to see everyone here. This is Tom Figueira in the Classics and History Department, a distinguished professor. I just wanted to ask about and also note the toxicity of the reintroduction of the fiscal exigency clause to the contract. Am I right in that's still their bargaining position? Well, that goes back a long way. I've been involved with coping with it since 1986 or 7, and it's had a long and aggravating history, which has got worse and worse and led to the abrogation of a contract without due process, and then the use of that abrogation to impose upon us the worst contract in higher education in the state. So that's almost a deal breaker by itself. The other point I'd like to make is that the tone of these negotiations seems, at least to a person on the outside like myself, to be very much like that of the racist and authoritarian days of Lawrence and Dick McCormick. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the same folks are involved. I know one of them for sure. I know her views well. And if not, the exact same people mentored by the exact same people, because this sounds like deja vu all again, as the old cliche goes. It means we're back in the target zone again for any fantasy that the unquiet mind would like to bring forward. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Thomas. Let's take a few questions, and then a couple of us can respond to this. So Let's hear Ellen and Rob, and then maybe Amy, Donna, Bryan, a few of us can, whoever wants to can jump in, and others as well. And let's try to have a conversation with each other, so people respond to one another. It's not helpful if the same people continually respond, but there might be a few technical questions like subject to language, which, somebody like Bryan can respond to. So let's go ahead, Ellen, and then Rob.
Hi, I'm Ellen Ledoux. I'm Associate Professor of English and Communication on the Camden campus. And I have a question that's related to students. So I voted to authorize the strike, but there was part of me that felt very conflicted because I have a bunch of graduating seniors in my 2 classes that I'm teaching right now. And they were looking at me with fear in their eyes about what's going to happen to them and their graduation. And so I was wondering, I tried to assure them that I had their back and that I would make sure that I would do everything in my power to not disrupt their earning of their degrees. But I want to maybe get some guidance or some language about how I can talk to my graduating seniors to make sure that they know that I have their back. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen. Rob, you want to get in, and then a couple of us can try to respond to those. And great
Sure,
work at the Senate.
I have 2 things. One is an update, and then the other is a comment on talking to students. So the update is I just came from I'm an associate professor in the Department of Anthropology, and I'm in the University Senate representing SAS New Brunswick. So I just came from the University Senate where we, in the space of the day, discussed, planned, changed the agenda of the University Senate with basically no opposition, introduced a resolution which Oren Rabinovich has actually posted in the chat that is a response to President Holloway's chilling effect email to students where he called strikes illegal, talked about people losing their paychecks, and so on and so forth. So in addition to being faculty, I also have a son who's a student at Rutgers. And my son has told me, and I sort of knew, he's not crossing a picket line, right? And there's going to be lots of students who don't want to cross a picket line. And when we passed this resolution, we called on President Holloway to make a reassurance and to send email to students, faculty, and staff that there will be no retaliation. So we have passed that, and the resolution also includes the second plank of the Be It Resolved, a 1-sentence statement that the University Senate, so this is not the Union EC, this is the University Senate. This is the body that represents Holloway's beloved community, right? There are alumni, there are faculty, there are staff, there are students, there are administrators in the University Senate. We have passed a resolution overwhelmingly. No one spoke in opposition against it. It passed by a margin of 70 to 11, calling on all faculty and all administrators to sign a very simple 1-sentence pledge that they're not going to retaliate against anyone for whatever decision they make. And what this means is if students, faculty, or staff choose to honor picket lines and not cross them, we're asking people to sign up and do no retaliation. And I think this was a big and important development. I hope I see there are 538 people here. I mean, can we have like a round of applause for 538 people? This is like amazing, uplifting, absolutely frigging incredible. And this is the kind of solidarity that will win, right? I am getting ready for the month of April when I'm going to make all of my new very, very best friends as we exercise solidarity, solidarity, solidarity. And you have it from the University Senate. And this is an opportunity to circulate a simple one sentence statement that says, we're not going to screw with your grade, right? If some faculty member who's a non-member decides to hold class, I'm an undergraduate program director. Students can come to me with a grade appeal, right? That's the process. And because I'm signing this pledge, I'm saying like, no, you're not going to be hurt. And I think, and so then this is the last part on the messaging to students. I think this is really important. We survived Hurricane Sandy, right? Class was disrupted, right? Quite badly for a long period of time, probably longer than a successful strike driven by like total solidarity would last, right? We survived it no problem. People graduated, people got an education, right? We learned from Hurricane Sandy. And for crying out loud, we managed Rutgers through a frigging 100-year pandemic event, and we were fine, and we held commencement. So the idea that commencement's not going to happen, you know, in Holloway's scaremongering email, or that somebody's graduation is going to be at stake is just absurd. We will find a way. And I think the thing to tell students is like, hey, we're you. We used to be students. You'll be us. We're all workers, and we're going to find a way for this to work. And the way we're going to do that is with solidarity, solidarity, solidarity. Okay, that's my piece.
Thank you for the work in the Senate and all the senators, and also for that really important corrective around students. I'm going to make a suggestion that we take Amy and I off pin so that we can all like look at each other together and see each other. It will create a little more community. So if folks don't mind, yeah, like just we can see each other a lot better this way, and I just think that's better. So thanks for that. I think there's been a good question from Ellen, and I think people should step into that question. I'll just say briefly to Thomas's question, subject to is one of the things we're negotiating over. So far, the university has not wanted to change language, but has said that they would give us 2 years without subject to, one of those 2 years being the year that we've already almost completed, which is classic. But anyway, that's where that's at, but we'll continue fighting on that. So my suggestion is we let more members speak. We have Ashley, Norman, and Mary. So let's jump into those and see where we're at, if that makes sense for everyone.
I will be setting a timer just so folks know, just to be able to maximize the number of voices in this meeting.
Thank you, Sherry. So Ashley, Norman, Mary.
Hi, I'm Ashley Balavander. I'm a grad worker in the School of Criminal Justice, fourth year PhD student. And I currently have a class of 70 online asynchronous students in Newark. And I was just wondering if there has been any discussion yet, or if we could create some sort of channel of communication specifically for online and asynchronous folks, you know, for communicating, how to communicate with students, but also safely, you know, without announcing that we will be going on strike. And then also specifically what to do in the case of a strike and what crossing the picket line looks like virtually and that kind of thing.
Norman, jump in, and Mary.
Okay. I'm Norman Markowitz. I'm a member of the history department. I have been since 1971. I have been also with Tom Figuera and others, particularly with Tom, both president and vice president in the past of the New Brunswick chapter. So I've been involved with our union for a very, very long time. I have a few general questions. One, in terms of the injunction for us to speak to our members, the fact that Holloway may petition for it doesn't mean he's going to get it. And what are the chances, given what the New Jersey courts are, of Holloway being able, one, to get the injunction, and how quickly would he be able to get the injunction if we go on strike? My other questions are not so much questions, but more suggestions. How can we mobilize the AFL-CIO, which is strongly supporting us, make that support relevant, and how can we mobilize elected officials in the state legislature and the governor, for that matter, for our support? Okay, those are my questions and comments.
Hi there. My name's Mary Alcaro. I'm a PhD candidate in the English department here. I'm currently on fellowship, so I have some logistical questions. Graduate fellowship pay being pitiful as it is, I have several other part-time positions at the university. Currently, I work at the Writing Center in Livingston, and I know that the English department and the Writing Centers are fully behind us. I'm not worried about what happens there. But currently, I am serving in a facilitator capacity for an honors colloquium, and most of my colleagues are deans. And I have not wanted to say anything about where I stand, but we are slated to have our last day of class with them on April 5th, at which time students are supposed to give a final project. So I'm just a little bit concerned. This may be a very specific case, and if that's the case, I'm happy to take this outside of this discussion and just talk to somebody on the side. But just in case anybody else has a similar sort of weird situation, I was just curious to see what info there was. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Amy, do you want to jump? I mean, we have like an async online question, the question about the injunction, and then Mary's question about her particular case. Do you want to jump in, or
Yeah,
somebody else?
there's,
On our...
if you take a look at the chat, there's a bunch of things about the async that Danielle has posted. There's going to be an FAQ that we'll have available soon. Just so for specific things, if you scroll up, Danielle, right, you put it. I saw something in the chat about it. Do not
Sorry,
record.
I didn't put the async chat. I didn't put the async FAQ, and Hank put in a document for thinking about how to talk to students. We're gathering the FAQ right now. I might be able to get it dropped in the next 15 minutes. So,
ooh, okay. And the injunction, what we've heard is if it does happen, it'll probably happen very, very quickly. The first day or no later than the second day. And then we have about a day before we can, we have to abide by whatever it says. Right. That's what I understand from our lawyers. Todd, is that?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. It's so what we expect is this: if we went on strike, let's just say we went on strike on a Monday, if Jonathan Holloway decides to be a strike breaker, which, as Amy pointed out, is an active decision by the president, a historian, to break a peaceful strike. If Jonathan Holloway chooses to be a strike breaker, he would have to go to court to get an injunction. That injunction, based on the last 20 years, would likely come quickly. But it's just an injunction with no teeth. So our position is, if we went on strike and they got an injunction, we would stay out on strike. The university would have to go back to the same court and have a hearing asking the court to enforce the injunction. That hearing could take 2 days. And at the end of that hearing, the judge could rule. But the last strike at Rutgers, the judge decided not to rule and held off for 9 days to let the dining service workers and AFSCME have a longer strike and work it out with the university. So we don't know what the court would do, but most often they tend to give the injunction. And then 2 to 3 days later, they affix a penalty so that if you stayed out on strike, there'll be some sort of penalty that would be applied to the strike. And the most common penalty is a fine on the unions. And then there are a couple other penalties that are also possible, including a fine on individuals. And they did jail strikers, but that was 20 years ago, right around 9/11. So it hasn't happened in New Jersey in about 20 years, and there's no reason to expect it. So that's our best understanding of how this would play out. And we would be having big town halls like this as that process played out to talk to members and decide how to proceed if we did go on strike and if Jonathan Holloway decided to actively break the strike. So maybe we should keep going with more questions. Oren, Matt, and Joni.
Thank you. I just want to augment the question for the instructors with a question, I guess, from sorry. I just saw the chat. A question from a staff perspective, what we can help, because I have kind of an advising role, and so to add to what faculty can do to help students and help graduating students and so on, what can staff and advisors do in all of that, and to add to that a question of help or elicit help in considering perspective when I think about what work I do and don't do if and when we do a strike, because of the fact that most of my work is to deal with things that students need. And so I don't want to break the picket. On the other
You're at
hand, I
time.
don't want to withhold support. So that's the,
Thanks, Lauren. All right, let's hear from Matt and Joni and maybe Michael, and then we can try to respond to some of these questions. I'll just flag at the end, I think Anthony will come and talk about how we want to face students. So some of the questions like Ellen's, maybe Oren's will be responded to there as well. So Matt, jump in, and then Joni and Michael.
Sorry to jump in, but there are people waiting in the whatever waiting room and they're unable to join the meeting.
Thanks for that heads up, Rula. We got it covered. Or Sherry's saying she doesn't see him. But go ahead, Matt and Joni and Michael.
Thank you, Todd. I'm Matt Weber. I'm an associate professor of communication. One of my questions was about next steps that the union's taking in negotiating, what a timeline looks like. And I saw that was partially answered in the chat. Just follow-on question to that. A lot of questions I'm getting are from my doctoral students. And they're really vulnerable in this type of situation and very, very uncertain about how they should be thinking about a strike, what it means for their salary, et cetera, what it means for their benefits. I think a lot of them are seeing what happened down in Philly, and it's definitely making them nervous. And so I'm wondering what communication there'll be and what steps will be taken to protect our graduate students as we move forward. Thank you.
I'll be really quick because I know that we're going to be short on time. So first of all, it's just like really awesome to see this. Todd and I were on strike, I think 22 years ago at Penn, and look at us now. So I have three separate things that I just wanted to ask. So one is, I've heard some people say that faculty who are in positions where they're also deans or department chairs or directors of something are not supposed to be going on strike with faculty because they also have this administrative hat that they're wearing. And I just want like some clarification on that. The second thing is, I want to know if what Holloway sent to us saying that it's illegal for us to go on strike is in fact itself a violation of labor law, and what, because that's intimidation. And I also just wanted to say, just to amplify it, because the chat is going nuts, that in terms of like supporting students, can we or can we not just give everybody A's, or is that itself breaking the terms of the strike because we would be doing labor by entering grades? So if I could get some clarification on those things would be great.
Hello, my name is Mike Otsuka. I'm a professor in the philosophy department. Just come from the United Kingdom, where I was a member of the University and College Union for 24 years and also involved in negotiations over pensions. So in the union I came from, they drew the sharp distinction between giving us advice about what sort of liability we might have from any sort of endorsement of the labor laws themselves. So there'd be huge condemnation of trying to obtain an injunction. But then they would also then give us very specific advice about the level of our liability and the possibility of liability. And I think that would be very important to provide to our members. Among other things, what sort of liability might they be able to impose retroactively if they then eventually obtain an injunction and enforcement? I think it's important that we're told whether there would be liability that could be imposed on us retroactively. Also think it doesn't really, I mean, the emphasis on whether there's a statute, I'm not sure how significant that is. I mean, if they have grounds to enforce it on non-statutory grounds, it doesn't, really help that there isn't a statute if they can actually enforce it. And I also thought that the mention of, the fact that strikes in states that where it was unlawful were not enforced against, that I didn't actually find that all that reassuring. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Bryan, do you want to jump in?
Todd, I wanted to maybe answer what Matt had said a bit more, if I could. Matt, I just want to let everybody know that bargaining is now slated as of Monday to go potentially round the clock. I mean, we would have liked, frankly, for that to have happened sooner, but beginning on Monday through all next week and all of next weekend, potentially, bargaining would be going on round the clock. And so we're certainly prepared to do that. We hope that management is. And I certainly heard what you said too about, the anxieties of grad workers, grad students. I'm a grad student myself. I've been a grad worker. One of the eventualities that we tried to prepare for beginning months ago was the creation of a strike fund in the event that Jonathan Holloway made the draconian decision to dock people's pay, right? And that doesn't have to happen either. But if it did, we wanted to have in place a strike fund, which realistically would not be able to replace the pay of folks entirely, right, who are on strike. And again, hopefully it wouldn't be the case that we need to be on strike for a long period of time, but we, for several months, planned and created jointly the two faculty chapters, a strike fund, which is receiving funds and which we would hope would receive lots more funds if we ever went out. We've been in touch with AFT National, who's made just as recently as yesterday, a verbal pledge. They had also said that they would do that before. There's also other facilities that could potentially be availed of too, if there was a situation of need. One thing, for instance, would be no interest loans that AFT might be able to extend to folks who are on strike. And so there are resources available for folks who find themselves in need of the kind that you're talking about here. But of course, it's also still a fluid situation, and we'll know more about it as we get closer. I would just close by saying I really hope that President Holloway and Rutgers would not take that step, but well, you'll know who they are if they do.
Thanks, Brian. So we have a bunch of questions I think we should try to respond to. Amy, I don't know if you want to jump in and respond to some, or if you want me to, or Brian helped with the grad worker question that Matt threw out. So
I'm overwhelmed, actually. I'm trying to read the chat. My multitasking is not.
All right, I can start, and then please jump in. So
please, and somebody else too, who knows.
Yeah, please. And there's a lot of people on this call who have been part of our organizing team that meets on Friday. We invite you to step in, just throw your hand up and help us answer these questions. It takes all of us, but I'll just answer a few quick questions. So to Joni's question, two questions. One is about whether, if you're both a faculty member and an admin, if you're a member of the union, period, and we vote to strike and you support the strike, you can strike, period, and end of sentence on all of your labor. And there's nothing that can stop that. That's your right. And so we could talk about it more offline, but there's no reason why, if you're an undergrad program director and also a teaching and a faculty member, that it changes your position vis-a-vis this strike. And also the A strike question, we're not there yet, but I do think if things did end up moving into May, we'd have to have a strong discussion about what we want to do for our students. We're not there, but I think it's clear, and others will speak to this in a bit. The goal of this fight is for both the workers and the students, and we, the unions here, deeply support our undergrads, our grads, right? It's the administration really could care less. We care about them, and together we will figure this out with them. So I just want to flag that. And then two other things I want to say real quick. There is no retroactive, to Michael, there is no retroactive liability that the courts could lay down, which is your question. We will know when the court enforces, if it chooses to, an injunction, what the penalty would be if we stayed on strike at that moment moving forward. So there's nothing that can happen retroactively based on the strike after the courts decide. And so we would collectively meet and discuss and talk about how to proceed if Jonathan Holloway chooses to be a strikebreaker, and then if the courts agree with him and choose to enforce injunction. We would all know about it, and we would have time to assess it and decide how to move forward. And then the last thing I'll just flag about the statute, which also was a point that Michael put out, which is the point here is that Jonathan Holloway said in two emails that a strike is either unlawful or illegal. That is patently incorrect. There is no statute or law on the book that says that we cannot strike as public sector workers. In fact, the statute says that firefighters and police cannot strike, other public sectors can. So it's very quiet on that. And everything about the law says that we have a right to strike. Now, if the courts choose to enforce an injunction that the university goes after and Holloway goes after, that's a different story and we will assess it. But it's important for us to assert our rights here. And so I don't know if others want to jump in, but I'll throw it to Tammy and then Travis, and we can take it from there.
Hey y'all, sorry I can't be on Zoom. I'm mobile and I typed this in the chat, but then I can't manage the chat because I'm on my phone. So for those of us, everyone, Tammy Lee, assistant professor, we're entering like high travel conference invited talk season. I was wondering if we could put together, or if we already have language to give to institutions that are inviting us to talk, but if we go on strike and obviously honor the picket line, that we could give language to folks to send to the university in support of the strike, but also saying, hey, you really fucked this up for us in academic exchange, right? So like, I don't want to have to cancel a talk on someone and then have that not be an opportunity for those institutions to put pressure on Rutgers to support the workers.
Great idea, Tammy. Travis, jump in.
I just wanted to speak really briefly to the point about folks who hold like administrative appointments. One of the things about this, so I'm the director of the writing program in Camden, and the thing about that position is it is administrative, but it is a faculty position because it's dealing with curricular matters. It's making decisions about the curriculum. And I think that's true for many, many, many of the directorships and things like that across the university. And so I think it's not a situation where I'm not doing my administrative job. That is part of my faculty job because curriculum is a faculty matter. And so it's not a conflict, right? I just wanted to emphasize that for most of us doing that work, those are curricular matters, those are faculty matters. And so it's not a one or the other kind of situation.
Thanks, Travis. We got Ian and David.
Thanks. I just got a little confused. If there's no statute or law that says that we're not allowed to strike, then on what authority can a judge issue an injunction to break the strike then? I'm a little confused about that.
David, you want to jump in and then we can.
I wasn't going to jump in on that. Do you want to respond to that, Todd?
You know, that they use that statute, and we can do some more research. We have a legal protocol on this. I can't cite exactly what they go in on, but they go in on saying that the strike hurts public institutions is the basic argument we understand. I can't tell you exactly what they use, but I think it is that same statute. David and then Jacob, and we can get that answer for you, Ian.
Yeah, just really quickly, I wanted to share what other people have been posting in the chat, that it's important for us to remember that management created this mess. They are responsible, not us. As someone posted up thread, you know, they have pushed us to the breaking point, and they cannot now turn around and blame us for breaking, quote, by striking. And that is something that's important when we respond to our students, that we let them know that we are not striking against them, and that we are not responsible for the problems that have been created. For 9 months at the bargaining table, we have watched management say, no, 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 we don't accept anything of substance you're saying. We are not interested in listening to what you have to say, let alone meaningfully engaging with it. And that what has led us to where we are now. I know that is not directly responsive to some of the legitimate concerns that we may have about how to respond to specific student concerns, but we should respond to those concerns generally within that context. Management is responsible.
Thanks, David. So we got Trent and Cynthia on stack.
Hi, Trent McDonald for the Don't Know Union staff do a lot of research for your union. And so just to try to clarify the terms, right? 40 out of 50 states do not have a public sector protected right to strike, while most workers in the private sector and then 10 states do. New Jersey, there has never been a law passed through the legislature that is in effect right at this moment that bans public sector strikes. The unlawful aspect comes about from a New Jersey 1968 Supreme Court decision. Union Beach Board of Education, ironically enough, is what that case is called, that ruled that public sector workers strike against the common good, against public services. And so that is the precedent that the Middlesex Chancery Division Court would cite were they to declare this an unprotected strike. There is no reason, there's plenty of reason to believe they could do that. But again, the ball is in President Holloway's court to pull the lever to ask a judge to declare it unlawful. They have to seek that charge. We must indeed assert our social rights of freedoms of assembly and not to be forced to labor under unfair conditions.
Excellent.
And I'll
Thank
point
you.
out that there have been 30 strikes by public sector workers in the last 36 years that have always resulted in a contract.
Thank you, Trent. Cynthia, jump in. And I'm just checking if Anthony is here also to get in on some student stuff after this. But go ahead.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, awesome. So Cynthia, go, and then we'll go to Anthony, just in the interest of time.
Yes, I did just want to comment actually now on what Trent just said. There's something, as I understand it, called common law, and then there's statute. There is no statute that prevents us from going out on strike. There is common law. And I think it would be very helpful if we had our legal team address that. I know there's a tremendous amount of discussion about this at the law school, even about the language that could be used to plan a rebuttal should this be invoked. There's got to be a little bit better coordination. But I think that we may be being just a little bit too dismissive of the fact that common law is still law. And yes, it would have to go to a court, but that is still a very real thing. I also want to just say one other thing. It might actually be helpful if we do end up going on strike, if we had subgroups. The question, for instance, addressing graduate students is very real. I'm a thesis advisor for graduate students. One of them is a foreign student. She could lose her student visa. She's here from a country that's very violent. She doesn't want to be sent back. So students are confronting some real life issues. In some cases, that might even be life and death if, they get into trouble in some regard because of the strike.
Thank you, Cynthia. I would suggest that we actually coordinate with you. So maybe you and I can reach out. We could talk about how to coordinate a little better with the law school moving forward. We would love to think through rebuttal. We do have legal counsel working on this. Weissman and Mintz is our law firm, and they are working on a rebuttal. But I think it would be great to have members of the Rutgers Law School.
Great. So if you reach out to me, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's pivot to Anthony now. And talk about we've had a lot of questions about student facing stuff. And so Anthony's going to help us think that through.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Todd. And I'll do my best to go through and address a majority of the questions. These are a lot of the questions that I myself have been thinking about. Back up a little bit. My name is Anthony. I'm a graduate student sociology department and also the graduate rep. And in my department and both in my class, I've been thinking about this of like, what type of contingency plans are we making for our students, and really driving home this narrative that we are not protesting or striking against our students, that it's actually against the administration. And so what I did is I started thinking about what have I been doing since the strike authorization vote to hopefully give you all just some examples of what I've been doing currently, what works, what doesn't work, and then ultimately frame it around a specific type of goal or action-oriented type of discussions with students. And so I dropped off the call a little bit. My Wi-Fi is bad, but I posted 2 of the main documents that I've been using and talking to my students. So the student presentation slides have been really helpful. At the beginning of every recitation, I open it up for union updates. So it's a way for me to engage with my students, hear what they're hearing on the ground, also offer them what's going on with the union and where we're at. And so I first did this again during the strike authorization vote. This slide is really helpful. The benefits is that it's more of a conversation than a lecture. So I encourage you, if you haven't started having these conversations, I highly recommend you start next week. And using these presentation slides will really help you guide your conversation. I know that not everyone is able to make every meeting, attend every event, and is not fully updated on everything going on, but the slides really give you a format to go on. And if there's any other questions, they're really going to fall into the student FAQs, which I also posted in the chat. You can hit up the union for these. They're on our union website. You can print these out. You can hand these out. I've been handing them out. But in that 15-minute segment where I talk back with my students, and what I really like about the presentation slides is the conversation. So you're asking students, what are their conditions? What are they upset about? You know, like, and in those conversations, you can hear them talk about high student fees, cost of parking, parking citations, multiple times in one day, student housing problems, a variety of things, right? And so this is where I think those slides are very helpful. At least they've been helpful for me. And also you can direct them to our website if you are unsure of how to answer. And I'm very upfront and honest if I don't have an answer for them. And since we do this regularly, I always follow up with them. And I do this in person, not on a virtual setting, which I'm happy to talk about after. And so the second point, using those FAQs, they're really helpful. My students really like those. I've been picking up extra copies, handing them out in class. And the last thing that I've been doing is talking about contingency plans, not only with my students, but with the instructor and with my department. And so what we're thinking about is communications, like how are we going to shift our communications from Rutgers platforms to a different type of platform? That could be various ways. You can use Gmail, WhatsApp, Slack, Signal, whatever it may be. But I'm going to be updating. I chose to update my students daily once we go on strike, because I have a lot of students too who are interested, who want to be in solidarity. And so I'm also thinking of working with how we're going to change course material, right? Like where none of us are working, we're withholding our labor. We can't expect our students to do work. And so what that means in reality is how are we going to change the course material to reflect that? What changes are we making? What pieces of material are we removing? What are we condensing? But ultimately opening this up as a conversation and communicating this with our students so that we're all on the same track here. Because again, we're not striking against our students. This is building solidarity. And really, when you're making those decisions, I really want you to think about flexibility. And the last thing I really want to stress here in terms of the goals of this, right? And we could think of these in three different ways, or the way I've been thinking about them is one on the educational component. So how are we educating them in terms of what's going on with our current contract? What are all the moving parts that they may not be getting? And we need to be very straight up and forward with these, because as we've seen through emails, if we're not on top of it, it can go sideways really quick. So really what we're doing is we're arming them against disinformation. You could be creative with this in many ways in terms of bringing it into your own current curriculum, but really highlighting the main points of where we're at. So there's the educational component. Two, there's the listening factor. So it's two ways. So listening to their demands, really talking to them and engaging with them and seeing what it is that they're also striking for, right? Because we're in this together. And so again, I go back to those PowerPoint slides because they really help with that. And the last thing I want to say, the overarching framework of this is building solidarity, is what we have to be really intentional about. For my students that want to get engaged, I've been directing them towards Rutgers One, our One Coalition. And so we really need to consider here the long term, not just the now, right? We're not just bringing students into a fight or a spectacle of a fight with the administration. We really need to incorporate our students into our struggle and vice versa for a long-term struggle. That's someone already mentioned it, that we're pushing back against a culture of anti-labor, exploitation, and discrediting of real concerns in this administration. So we need to be really concrete about that. And so this way we have something solid that can last us for a long time and not just for the here and now. And so those are some of what I've been doing. I'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, we have a Hank on who wants to jump in. I'll just flag, we're 5 minutes after the hour, so we'll try to wrap this up in the next 5 minutes. And I'll just, before Hank goes, just underline something that Sebastian put in the chat, which is we have demands focused on the needs of our students too, that came out of students knocking on hundreds of doors over the last couple summers and asking one another what they needed and what they wanted us to fight for. And so two demands that really center students are, one, Rutgers, when you owe a fine or fee for a parking ticket or a library book, Rutgers doesn't let you register or get your diploma. And so we're demanding Rutgers cancel that practice. And then when you do leave, Rutgers sells your debt to a third-party collection agency. And so we're demanding that Rutgers end this practice, one, so students can register and get their diplomas if they owe fines and fees, and two, that Rutgers stop selling people's debt to third-party collection agencies. It's a public institution, for God's sake. And then two, we're calling on Rutgers to have a rent freeze on all of its properties, rental properties. And we believe this would have a big effect for our undergrads and our grads and international students, but it would also be a big boon to the larger New Brunswick community because Rutgers is the biggest landlord. So if Rutgers freezes its rents, it will both be good for us and our students, but also all of New Brunswick, which is seeing skyrocketing rents. With that, I will kick it to Hank.
Make sure I'm off mute. I just want to second what a lot of what Anthony said is just really important things for us to take to keep forward for us as we deal with students. One of the things I would suggest, we've created a Google Doc, and there are a lot of great ideas about how to communicate with students, what to talk to students about, how to talk to students. If everybody who has some ideas can jump onto the Google Doc, the link is in the chat. We can start to put together something that will give a lot more people guidance. I mean, we have 500 people here. We talk to students all the time, right? Yeah, I'll repost it, Danielle. So yeah, there's that. I think that's really important. I've been talking to them all semester, and they are really they're really jazzed about it because of because we're being honest with them. They understand stuff's going on here, and if we are honest, they will support us. I think I had some other stuff I was thinking about, but that's enough.
Thanks, Hank. All right, so we're going to have, I think since we have no one else on stack, we'll have two more speakers. Sherry is going to jump in and talk a bit about international students and help us think that through. And then Amy, I think, is going to close us out from there. So Sherry, jump in.
I'm putting the timer on myself as well, so you'll hear the little chime from me. I just wanted to, because I didn't want to leave it hanging out there. It was mentioned earlier about international. Every word that we're putting out in FAQs has been vetted by immigration attorneys and labor attorneys, including by the AFT's immigration attorney. I just want to read the opening thing of what I just popped in the chat that has already disappeared for me. There we go. Every person in the United States, including any international scholar, has the right to join, organize, and support a union under the First Amendment guarantee of freedom of association. It includes activities like picketing, rallies, strikes. In other words, unions are considered part of civil society in American society by the law, and participating in them is legal activity. People won't lose their visas. And nobody will be making a decision or asked to make a decision without being fully informed of all of their rights. And that's why I really hope people go to these picket line trainings where we're also gonna have palm cards with Know Your Rights. We really want to take care of each other and have each other's back. That's the whole point of a strike.
No, thanks, Sherry. So I know we didn't get to answer everybody's questions. I hope that we will save the chat. We have picket workshops on Zoom for an hour, and we will be doing them all next week. Do we have the link in the chat to sign up? If you haven't signed up, it's a great way to get an hour in of learning and asking your questions and learning what we'll do on the picket lines if we have to go on the picket lines. So there was a question about how we will get the word out about a strike if we're going to call a strike. And we haven't completely figured that out yet, but it won't come very soon. It'll come pretty soon before we actually have to go out. We can't give a lot of advance notice. So stay tuned to your text, to your, we hustle, all the ways we communicate. We send emails, whatever it is that you use we'll get there, but you have to kind of pay attention to, and it'll be somewhere in the next 2 weeks. We'll know pretty soon. So it was great to see you all, and I'll see you at open bargaining, see you at meetings, at happy hours, and maybe on the picket line. So take good care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Union strong.
We're going to win.
Do it. We're going to win.